Number 76. What is the minimum safe altitude in an aircraft that may be operated over a congested area of a city? Except when necessary for takeoff or landing, no person may operate an aircraft over a congested area of a city, town, or settlement, or over any open air assembly of persons below an altitude of 1,000 feet above the highest obstacle within a horizontal radius of 2,000 feet of the aircraft. Number 77. In areas other than congested areas, what minimum safe altitudes shall be used? Except when necessary for takeoff or landing, an aircraft shall be operated no lower than 500 feet above the surface, except over open water or sparsely populated areas. In those cases, the aircraft may not be operated closer than 500 feet to any person, vessel, vehicle, or structure. 78. Define minimum safe altitude. An altitude allowing, if a power unit fails, an emergency landing without undue hazard to persons or property on the surface. 79. What is the lowest altitude an aircraft may be operated over an area designated as a U.S. Wildlife Refuge, Park, or Forest Service area? All aircraft are requested to maintain a minimum altitude of 2,000 feet above the surface. Number 80. When flying below 18,000 feet MSL, cruising altitude must be maintained by reference to an altimeter set using what procedure? Wonder if they meant altimeter setting. When the barometric pressure is 31.00 Hg or less, each person operating an aircraft must maintain the cruising altitude of that aircraft by reference to an altimeter that is set to the current reported altimeter setting of a station along the route and within 100 nautical miles of the aircraft. If there is no station within this area, the current reported altimeter setting of an available station may be used. If the barometric pressure exceeds 31.00 Hg, consult the Aeronautical Information Manual for correct procedures. If an altimeter setting is not available before flight, what procedure should be used? Use the same procedure as in the case of an aircraft not equipped with a radio. The elevation of the departure airport or an appropriate altimeter setting available before departure should be used. 82. When may a pilot intentionally deviate from an air traffic control clearance or instruction? No pilot may deviate from an ATC clearance unless there A, an amended clearance has been obtained, B, an emergency exists, C, or in response to a traffic and collision avoidance system resolution advisory. 83. As pilot in command, what action, if any, is required of you if you deviate from an ATC instruction and priority is given? 2 actions are required of you as PIC. A. Each pilot in command who in an emergency or in response to a traffic alert and collision avoidance system resolution advisory deviates from an air traffic control clearance or instruction must notify ATC of that deviation as soon as possible. Or B, each pilot in command who is given priority by ATC in an emergency shall submit a detailed report of that emergency within 48 hours to the manager of that air traffic control facility if requested by ATC on the ground responsibility. 84. In the event of radio failure while operating an aircraft to, from, through, or on an airport having an operational tower, what are the different types and meanings of light gun signals you might receive from an air traffic control tower? If the light is steady green and you're on the ground, you're cleared for takeoff. If it's steady green and you're in the air, you're cleared to land. A flashing green light on the ground, cleared for takeoff. Flashing green light in the air, return for landing. Steady red light on the ground, stop. Steady red light in the air, yield or continue circling. Flashing red light on the ground, taxi, clear of the runway. Flashing red light in the air, unsafe, do not land. Flashing white light on the ground, return to start. Flashing white light in the air, do not use or not used. Alternating red and green light on the ground, exercise extreme caution. And alternating red and green light in the air, exercise extreme caution. Most pilots find these hard to remember. Always have a reference in the cockpit, kneeboard, placard, or EFB app. 85. If the aircraft radio fails in flight under VFR while operating into a tower-controlled airport, what conditions must be met before a landing may be made at that airport? Weather conditions must be at or above basic VFR weather minimums. Visual contact with the tower is maintained, and a clearance to land is received. 86. What procedures should be used when attempting communications with the tower when the aircraft transmitter or receiver or both are inoperative? If the arriving aircraft receiver is inoperative, A. Remain outside or above Class Delta service area. B. Determine the direction and flow of traffic. C. Advise the tower of aircraft type, position, altitude, and intention to land. Request to be controlled by light signals. D. At 3 to 5 miles, advise the tower of position and join the traffic pattern. E. Watch the tower for light gun signals. If you're the arriving aircraft and your transmitter is inoperative, you want to remain outside or above Class Delta surface area, determine direction and flow of traffic, monitor frequency for landing or traffic information, join the traffic pattern and watch for light gun signals. E. During daytime, acknowledge by rocking your wings. At nighttime, acknowledge by flashing landing light or nav lights. If you're the arriving aircraft, your transmitter and receiver is inoperative, you remain outside or above the Class Delta surface area, determine the direction and flow of traffic, join the traffic pattern, and watch for light gun signals. Acknowledge the light gun signals as noted above. 87. What general rules apply concerning traffic pattern operations at non-towered airports within Class Echo or Gulf airspace? Each person operating an aircraft to or from an airport without an operating control tower shall, in the case of an airplane approaching to land, make all turns of that airport to the left unless the airport displays approved light signals or visual markings indicating that turns should be made to the right, in which case the pilot should make all turns to the right. B. In the case of an airplane departing an airport, comply with any traffic patterns established for that airport in Part 93. 88. When operating in Class Delta airspace, what procedure should be used when approaching to land on a runway with a visual approach slope indicator? I'm going to repeat that. When operating in Class Delta airspace, what procedure should be used when approaching to land on a runway with a visual approach slope indicator. Aircraft approaching to land on a runway served by a visual approach slope indicator shall maintain an altitude at or above the glide slope until a lower altitude is necessary for a safe landing. 89. When is the fuel requirement for VFR flight at night? No person may begin a flight in an airplane under VFR conditions unless, considering wind and forecast weather conditions, there is enough fuel to fly to the first point of intended landing and assuming normal cruising speed. At night, to fly after that for at least 45 minutes. 90. What is the fuel requirement for VFR flight during the day? During the day, you must be able to fly to the first point of intended landing and, assuming normal cruising speed, to fly after that for at least 30 minutes. 91. When operating an aircraft under VFR in level cruise flight at an altitude of more than 3,000 feet above the surface, what rules apply concerning specific altitudes flown? When operating above 3,000 feet AGL but less than 18,000 feet MSL on a magnetic course of 0 degrees to 179 degrees, fly at an odd 1,000-foot MSL altitude plus 500. When on a magnetic course of 180 degrees to 359 degrees, fly at an even 1,000-foot MSL altitude pattern plus 500 feet. 92. What is an ELT? Emergency Locator Transmitter. It's a radio transmitter attached to the aircraft structure which operates from its own power source on 121.5. 243.0 MHz and the newer 406 MHz. It aids in locating downed aircraft by radiating a downward sweeping audio tone 2 to 4 times a second. It is designed to function without human action after an accident. It can be operationally tested during the first 5 minutes after any hour. Number 93. Is an emergency locator transmitter required on all aircraft? No persons may operate a U.S. registered civil airplane unless there is attached to the airplane an automatic type emergency locator transmitter that is in operable condition. Several exceptions exist, including the following. A. Aircraft engaged in training operations conducted entirely within a 50 nautical mile radius of the airport for which such local flight operations begin. Or B. Aircraft engaged in design and testing. C. New aircraft engaged in manufacture, preparation, and delivery. Or D. Aircraft engaged in agricultural operations. 94. When must the batteries in an emergency locator transmitter be replaced or recharged if rechargeable? Batteries used in ELTs must be replaced or recharged if the batteries are rechargeable. A. When the transmitter has been in use for more than 1 cumulative hour. Or B. When 50% of their useful life or rechargeable batteries, 50% of their useful life of charge, has expired. Note, the new expiration date for replacing or recharging the battery must be legibly marked on the outside of the transmitter and entered in the aircraft maintenance record. This data indicates 50% of the battery's useful life. 95. What are the regulations concerning use of supplemental oxygen on board an aircraft? At cabin pressure altitudes above 12,500 feet MSL, up to and including 14,000 feet MSL, for that part of the flight at those altitudes that is more than 30 minutes, the required minimum flight crew must be provided with the use of supplemental oxygen. At cabin pressure altitudes above 14,500 MSL, for the entire flight time at those altitudes, the required flight crew is provided with and uses supplemental oxygen. Or C, at cabin pressure altitudes above 15,000 feet MSL, each occupant is provided with supplemental oxygen. 96. According to regulations, where is aerobatic flight of an aircraft not permitted? No person may operate an aircraft in aerobatic flight over any congested area of a city, town, or settlement, over any open-air assembly of persons, within the lateral boundaries of the surface areas of Class Bravo, Charlie, Delta, or Echo airspace designated for an airport, within 4 nautical miles of the center line of a federal airway, below an altitude of 1,500 feet above the surface, or when flight visibility is less than 3 statute miles. 97. Define aerobatic flight. For the purpose of this section, aerobatic flight means an intentional maneuver involving an abrupt change in an aircraft's attitude, an abnormal attitude, or abnormal acceleration not necessary for normal flight. 98. When are parachutes required on board an aircraft? Unless each occupant of the aircraft is wearing an approved parachute, no pilot of a civil aircraft carrying any person other than a crew member may execute any intentional maneuvers that exceed a bank angle of 60 degrees relative to the horizon, or a nose-up or nose-down attitude of 30 degrees relative to the horizon. Or B, the above regulation does not apply to flight tests for pilot certification or rating, or spins and other flight maneuvers required by the regulations for any certificate or rating when given by a CFI or ATP instructing in accordance with Part 61.67.